Hey guys! Welcome to Shivan Story Time, and today we are going to listen to r/malicious compliance.
Want to be called by your formal name? No problem, however, you must do the same. Years ago, I was working for a university as a secretary for a rather large department. I was told by the chair to call everyone by their first name rather than the formal Dr. So-and-so. I complied and life went on with me using informal names and them doing the same for me. However, about a year later, I called to Dr. So-and-so in the next room to ask a question. It was benign enough and still respectful using his first name. Not long after, I received an email. He addressed it to Risili and stated that I needed to call him Dr. So-and-so and not to use his first name. I knew this was a way to establish his superiority over me, but I would not have it. I may have been the secretary, but I was still a human being who deserved respect too. Here is where the malicious compliance came into play. I wrote him an email back addressing him as Dr. So-and-so. I agreed to call him by his formal name, but I insisted that he do the same to me. I am no longer Risili but Mrs. Doe. I copied the department chair and executive aide so all were in the loop. He went to the chair to complain, but she sided with me. And so it began. From then on out, it was Dr. So-and-so on every correspondence, and when I spoke to him, if he addressed me as Risili, I would remind him that I wanted to be addressed as Mrs. Doe and would not answer until he addressed me as such. This really got on his nerve. He did not want to be the only one to call me by the formal, as it messed with his need for superiority over a peon. It only took less than a week before he wrote me again. This time, it was to say to please call him Paul instead of Dr. So-and-so. No apology to me, just a resounding white flag surrender. I took it as a small win for the peons and proceeded to call him Paul. I worked in that department for 8 years and we never had another problem like this. On a side note, I always called him Dr. So-and-so in front of and to the students, as most wanted to be addressed as such in their classes. My owner tells me not to look for dead bodies. Have fun digging in the snow. I have a bit of an odd malicious compliance story. I am a dog trainer. I specialize in nose work, and am best with detection dogs. Think human remains detection, narcotics, explosives, etc., not tracking dogs or live detection. They follow a trail scent, or locate a live human or animal. With tracking and live detection dogs, they are trained to not cue on a dead body, so that in a disaster situation you don't waste time digging up a corpse when there are survivors to be found first. Cadaver dogs do the cleanup work. I wanted to try my hand at training and handling a live detection dog when I was young and stupid. I trained him very specifically to not look for dead bodies, and to not cue on human remains, only to focus on tracks and living people. Cue malicious compliance. I was on a wilderness search and rescue assignment in the winter. My boy found a track scent and followed it. Then he stopped moving, and stood stock still in the snow. He didn't move his head, he didn't sit, he did nothing. I kept telling him to find it and follow it, but he wouldn't move. I tried to pull him away and try again, and he did the same thing. I was confused. I brushed aside snow, looking for maybe an article of clothing he had found and couldn't retrieve. Nope. It was a dead body under the snow. Well, I told him just to follow a track and not to cue on a body. He followed the track and stopped. I don't know what I expected. Begged me to come in on my first day of a vacation and then threatened me with termination. I know this is similar to the current top post, but their story reminded me of my own. As I was finishing up high school, I got my first job working at the Circle K down the street from my house. I still lived with my dad and I had a pretty sweet deal, because he was a consultant, thus his big house with a pool in a nice neighborhood was all mine about 3 weeks out of the month. Sometimes as long as 6 weeks. My dad told me I had to start paying for my own insurance for my car and there'd be no allowance anymore, so I needed some sort of job, but I didn't need anything major, so I took the job under the premise that they just needed someone part-time. Immediately I was thrust into 40+ hours a week at this place as the manager had some weird inability to hire people. I honestly think he just lied about not being able to get people so he could run a skeleton crew to make his profit margins look better. I can't count how many times they had one person working a shift that needed at least 2 and could have used 3. The place was always a bit of a mess because, as mentioned, we were chronically understaffed. He was always asking us to do a ridiculous amount of work, and at one point he even managed to piss off the beverage distributor so they'd no longer help stock the coolers when our drink supplies came in, so sometimes you'd be in charge of stocking all the coolers, a huge order, while having to keep an eye on the register and all of the other shit we had to do, like facing all the shelves, rotating the hot foods, etc. Long story short, what should have been a brainless shit job that did have shit pay, minimum wage, ended up sucking up a huge portion of my time. But life could have been worse. I had a lot of extra money and a really nice house all to myself, so there were some social perks, indeed. At a certain point I requested some time off to go on a road trip with some friends, and it was granted. The day that we're supposed to be heading out on the road, I get a call from my boss begging me to cover. He acknowledges that it's supposed to be the beginning of my vacation, but he couldn't get anyone to cover. We probably didn't actually have anyone that could that day, as we were so understaffed. Luckily for him, the driver on our road trip had let us know that we were going to be leaving later than originally thought, pretty much exactly when I'd normally be getting off shift, so I agreed, thinking Mr. Bossman would owe me one. So I go in, and is there gratitude? Is there some beer with a bow on it waiting for me as a post-shift thank you? No. The dude gives me this ridiculous list of shit to do. There was always a lot of work to do there, but this was actually the most ridiculous amount he'd ever dumped on me. The icing on the cake was that he ended his whole spiel with, "And I need all this done tonight or don't bother showing back up." The cockwad actually had the nerve to threaten me after I came in on a day that was supposed to be the beginning of a vacation. So I waited for him to leave, enjoyed some hot dogs while reading a magazine, sold myself a ton of beer. I couldn't stoop to actually stealing, but I was under 21, so this was convenient, and then closed the place up about 2 hours early. I didn't want to leave right away because then someone might notify him, but this particular branch was dead after a certain time, and so no one would notice. Then I went on vacation, and seeing as I hadn't done anything, let alone his laundry list of crap, I never went back. Despite the fact that I didn't do what he asked, he still expected me back, so I had the pleasure of listening to his 5 or 6 irate messages before he finally realized that it wasn't a misunderstanding about when I was supposed to return to work. I was just following his instructions. No water for me. No water for everyone then. Happened in a hotel where I worked. There was a buffet at the beach where guests were having breakfast, etc. It was a type where you can eat and drink what you want as much as you want, as long as you don't leave the premises with food. I believe the term is smorgasbord. It was pretty convenient since you could go to swim and then back inside to have a glass of water for EX, and buffet administrators were totally cool about that. They only looked out for any non-guests, resolved issues if any, but it was strictly forbidden to take food and water with you. If you wanted to take something with you, you had to pay a small fee for an empty bottle and a loot box where you could put anything you like. So that was the rule one particularly creative guest decided to maliciously comply to. It started with a glass of water. She tried to take a single glass of water with her to drink outside. It was like 10 to 15 meters to her chaise lounge from there. Imagine the pain. Administrator politely said to her, "It is forbidden to take water with you. You can drink it here and return later to drink again, or you can pay for an empty bottle to take it outside." The guest asked if it is okay to put glasses of water on the nearest table to the exit then. Admin said, "Yes, of course, just don't take it outside." At this point I need to clarify that there are around 400 plus guests relaxing, so it is impossible to control what everyone is doing at their tables at the same time. In a couple of minutes another guests come by asking where can he take a glass to pour water. Admin notices an empty tray where empty glasses were usually present, quickly goes to bring another tray of glasses. And later another one. And again another one. Something felt wrong. Of course there are a lot of people, but most of them take a glass each and constantly fill it with water again and again. Never trays with glasses were empty so often so fast. And their admin noticed it, a huge pyramid of glasses filled with water on the table near the exit. In total it was around 100 plus glasses on the table, in a perfect pyramid shape, and nobody giving a damn about how much water was wasted. After a loud scene and a few spilled glasses of water, the issue was resolved somehow, but it was particularly hard to argue with a guest since it was allowed to take and drink as much water as you like inside. I wasn't involved in that thankfully, but I heard that the guest shouted something like, "You forbid me to take water from here, then nobody will take water from here at all." Laughing face, TLDR guest was forbidden to take water from buffet outside. So she decided to make a pyramid of glasses filled with water inside, since it was allowed to take as much water or food as you want inside.